problem with a gentle lecture in his wood-paneled study. Mike Brady was more than just a character on a sitcom. He was a cultural ideal. For 5 years, Robert Reed welcomed us into the Brady home, and in doing so, he became one of the most beloved father figures in television history. But behind that warm, reassuring smile, the man who played Mike Brady was fighting a silent, private battle. He was a man of immense talent and intellect, a classically trained Shakespearean actor who found himself trapped in the cheerful, simplistic world of a 1970s sitcom. And he was harboring a secret so profound, so dangerous for its time, that he lived in constant fear of it destroying everything he had built. This is the story of a man who spent his life projecting an image of perfect, conventional happiness, while his own reality was anything but. It's a story of conflict, of quiet desperation, and of a secret he took to his grave. This is the hidden truth of Robert Reed, the man who was America's dad, but who could never truly be himself. To understand the immense pressure Robert Reed was under, we have to step back in time, not just to the groovy, polyester-clad 1970s, but to the world he was born into. John Robert Reitz Jr. entered the world in 1932 in the quiet Chicago suburb of Highland Park, Illinois. His childhood, spent moving through Illinois, Oklahoma, and Iowa, was a portrait of classic mid-century American life. His father worked for the government. His mother was a homemaker. He was a bright, handsome, and popular young man. He was the boy next door, the all-American kid. But even from a young age, there was a depth and seriousness to him that set him apart. He found a home not on the football field, but on the stage. He fell in love with the grandeur and complexity of Shakespeare, with the power of language to explore the deepest corners of the human soul. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. He studied drama at Northwestern University, one of the most prestigious theater programs in the country. He then traveled to London on a scholarship to attend the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He was immersing himself in the world of classical theater, honing his craft alongside future legends. This was his passion. He saw himself as a serious, legitimate actor in the vein of Laurence Olivier or John Gielgud. But to be a gay man in the 1950s was to live a life of constant performance and not just on the stage. The post-war era was a time of rigid social conformity. The ideal American family, a working father, a stay-at-home mother, and 2.5 children, was plastered across billboards and television screens. Homosexuality was not just taboo. It was classified as a mental illness. It was illegal. A man could lose his career, his family, his freedom, if his secret was discovered. For an aspiring actor in Hollywood, a town built on image and illusion, the stakes were even higher. The morality clauses in studio contracts were strict, and any hint of deviance could get you blacklisted forever. This was the world Robert Reed had to navigate. He learned early on to build a wall around his private life, to create a public persona that was safe, conventional, and above reproach. In 1957, in a move that was common for gay men of his era seeking to create a convincing public cover, Robert Reed married a fellow Northwestern student, Marilyn Rosenberg. They had a daughter together, Karen. On the surface, he had achieved the American dream. He was a handsome married father with a promising acting career. But the marriage was a product of its time, an attempt to fit into a mold that his heart could never truly occupy. The couple divorced in 1959, and Robert would never marry again. He would spend the rest of his life as a single man, a fact that friends would later see as a quiet testament to his true nature. His career began to take off in the late 1950s and early 60s. He landed guest spots on popular shows and then secured a lead role in the acclaimed legal drama, The Defenders. He played Kenneth Preston, the idealistic young son in a father-son law firm. The show was a critical success, known for tackling serious social issues. It was the kind of work Reed respected. It had depth, integrity, and social relevance. It was a perfect fit for the serious, classically trained actor he was. He was earning accolades, he was respected by his peers, and he was doing work he could be proud of. He had every reason to believe his career would continue on this prestigious path. But then, a very different kind of script landed on his desk. It was for a new sitcom, a frothy saccharine comedy about a widow with 3 daughters who marries a widower with 3 sons. It was called The Brady Bunch. Robert Reed, the serious Shakespearean actor, hated it. He thought the writing was simplistic, the situations unbelievable, and the humor juvenile. He complained to his agent that it was fluff and beneath him, but the defenders had ended, and like any working actor, he needed a job. His agent convinced him to take the role, arguing that the show would likely be a quick flop, and he could collect a few paychecks before moving on to more serious projects. It was a decision made out of practicality, a temporary detour, he thought, in a long and distinguished career. He had no idea that this fluff would come to define him for the rest of his life and for generations to come. He had no idea he was about to become Mike Brady. From the very beginning, the set of The Brady Bunch was a place of deep and profound conflict for Robert Reed. On one hand, he genuinely cared for the people he worked with. He developed a special, almost paternal bond with the 6 child actors who played his on-screen children. He saw their potential and took it upon himself to be their mentor. During breaks in filming, he would take them on educational trips to museums or give them history lessons. He famously bought each of the kids a Super 8 camera and taught them about filmmaking. He wanted to expand their minds, to give them a taste of the culture and art that he so deeply valued. The Brady kids, in turn, adored him. They saw him as a figure of great intellect and warmth, a true father figure in a way that went far beyond the scripted lines. But on the other hand, Robert Reed despised the show itself. His contempt for the scripts became the stuff of Hollywood legend. He would meticulously read each one, his pencil flying across the page, circling dialogue he found unbelievable, plot points he deemed illogical, and jokes he considered unfunny. He would then write multi-page memos to the show's creator and producer, Sherwood Schwartz, detailing his objections in blistering academic prose. He argued about everything. He fought against a scene where Mike Brady ineptly attempts to do laundry, arguing that an architect would surely know how to operate a washing machine. He protested a storyline where the family wins a contest by filling hundreds of books of trading stamps, declaring it statistically impossible. One of the most famous battles was over an episode where Carol Brady's station wagon is splattered with strawberry preserves after a drive-in mishap. The script called for Mike to have an exaggerated comical reaction. Reed refused. He argued that no rational human being would react that way. He saw it as cheap, buffoonish comedy, and it violated his sense of realism and his perception of Mike Brady as a grounded, intelligent man. He and Sherwood Schwartz had epic screaming matches over these points. Schwartz, a veteran comedy writer, saw Reed's objections as pretentious and out of touch with what made a sitcom work. Reed saw Schwartz's writing as an insult to his intelligence and the intelligence of the audience. It's easy to dismiss these conflicts as the tantrums of a difficult, ego-driven actor. But when you understand the secret Robert Reed was hiding, his on-set behavior takes on a new, more poignant light. This wasn't just about artistic integrity. It was about control. In his personal life, Robert Reed had to live in a constant state of fear and concealment. He couldn't control who he was or who he loved. He couldn't control the prejudice of the society he lived in. The one place he felt he could exercise some control was on the set. The scripts in his eyes weren't just poorly written. They represented a world of simplistic, heteronormative perfection that was a complete fantasy, a world that had no place for a man like him. His obsession with logic and realism on a show that was inherently illogical and unrealistic was perhaps a desperate attempt to ground himself, to impose order on a life that felt increasingly chaotic and inauthentic. Florence Henderson, the actress who played his on-screen wife, Carol Brady, was one of the few people who seemed to understand the depth of his turmoil. They developed a deep and abiding friendship, a bond of genuine affection and respect. Henderson was a savvy, empathetic woman, and she sensed his unhappiness. While Reed never explicitly told her he was gay, she knew. She once recalled a moment during the first season when he was particularly distraught over a scene. She pulled him aside and said, "Bob, I don't care what your sexual orientation is. I love you, and you are my husband." It was a gesture of profound acceptance in an era when such acceptance was rare, and it cemented a lifelong bond between them. She became his confidant and his defender, often acting as a mediator between him and the producers. The emotional toll of living a double life was immense. He channeled his frustration into his work, but also into a private life that was, by necessity, compartmentalized and secretive. He found solace in intellectual pursuits, in his love of music and literature, and in travel. He owned a beautiful home in Pasadena, a Tudor-style house filled with antiques and books, a sanctuary of refined taste that was a world away from the Brady family's split-level ranch house. But it was a lonely existence. While his co-stars went home to their families, he went home to his secrets. There's a particularly revealing and rarely discussed incident that highlights the psychological tightrope he was walking. In 1971, he took a role in the television movie The Man Who Came to Dinner. The director of the film was a man named Buzz Kulik. During the production, Reed's behavior was erratic. He was argumentative and difficult, much as he was on the Brady set. One day, Kulik, frustrated with Reed's resistance, pulled him aside and confronted him directly. He said something to the effect of, "I don't know what your problem is, but you need to deal with it." What happened next was shocking. Robert Reed had a complete emotional breakdown. He began to sob uncontrollably. It was a rare and terrifying crack in the carefully constructed facade. The immense pressure, the fear of exposure, the frustration with his career, it all came pouring out. It was a stark reminder that beneath the handsome, confident exterior was a man in deep and profound pain. As the Brady Bunch grew in popularity, the chasm between Robert Reed's public persona and his private self widened. He was becoming a pop culture icon, the embodiment of the perfect American dad. He was mobbed by fans in public. Children would run up to him, calling him Mr. Brady. He was always gracious, always kind, but for a man who valued his privacy and his intellectual credibility above all else, this kind of fame was a special kind of hell. It wasn't the fame he had wanted. He wasn't being recognized for his Shakespearean prowess. He was being celebrated for a role he fundamentally disrespected. And the irony was devastating. The role that made him a household name was that of a happy, heterosexual family man, the very thing society demanded he be, but that he could never authentically embody. The breaking point finally came in the show's fifth and final season. The script for the last episode, titled The Hair-Brained Scheme, involved a plot where a rival company's hair tonic turns Greg's hair orange. For Reed, this was the final straw. It was, in his view, the most idiotic, nonsensical, and embarrassing storyline the show had ever produced. He simply refused to be in the episode. He showed up to the set, but he spent the week in his dressing room reading a book. He was written out of the episode with a line explaining that Mike Brady was away on a business trip. Robert Reed, America's dad, was not present for the final episode of the Brady Bunch. It was a silent, powerful protest, a final act of defiance against the show that had made him a star but had also become his prison. He knew the show was ending, and he later told friends he felt an immense sense of relief. After the Brady Bunch ended in 1974, Robert Reed was determined to reclaim his identity as a serious actor. He threw himself into a wide variety of roles, eager to shed the wholesome image of Mike Brady. He played a doctor who performs a transgender operation in a groundbreaking episode of Medical Center. He earned Emmy nominations for his powerful performances in the epic miniseries Rich Man, Poor Man, and Roots, where he played a slave owner, a role as far from Mike Brady as one could imagine. He returned to the stage, performing Shakespeare whenever he could. He was proving to the world, and perhaps to himself, that he was more than just a sitcom dad. But he could never fully escape the shadow of the Brady house. Throughout the 70s and 80s, he was repeatedly pulled back into the world he had tried so hard to leave behind. He reluctantly appeared in the Brady Bunch Hour, a bizarre and universally panned variety show, and later in the reunion movies, The Brady Girls Get Married and A Very Brady Christmas. He often did it for the money, but also out of a sense of loyalty to his on-screen family, particularly Florence Henderson and the kids, who had become a real, if unconventional, family to him. His relationship with the role of Mike Brady remained deeply complicated. He still criticized the writing, but as the years went by, a grudging acceptance seemed to set in. He understood the profound and positive impact the show had on audiences. He saw that Mike Brady had become a symbol of stability and decency for a generation. In a rare moment of reflection, he once said, "It's a part of me, and I'm a part of it. I'll be Mike Brady until the day I die." It was a statement of resignation, but perhaps also a flicker of pride. The central controversy of Robert Reed's life, of course, was the secret of his sexuality. It's a controversy only because of the time in which he lived. Today, an actor's sexual orientation is, for the most part, a personal matter. But in Reed's era, it was a career-ending, life-destroying secret. The historical debate is not about if he was gay. That is a fact confirmed by his closest friends and his own daughter after his death, but about the cost of that secret. How did it shape him as an artist and as a man? Some have argued that his constant battles with the Brady producers were a direct result of his closeted life. They see his rage and frustration as a transference of the anger he felt towards a society that forced him to hide. Others have a more nuanced view. They believe his artistic principles were genuine. He was, after all, a classically trained actor who found himself in a job that didn't align with his talents or his ambitions. His personal struggles likely exacerbated his professional frustrations, creating a perfect storm of unhappiness. The truth, as always, is probably a combination of both. He was a complex man, and his motivations were equally complex. He was both a principled artist and a man in pain, and it is impossible to separate one from the other. The long-term significance of Robert Reed's story is profound, and it has evolved over time. For decades after his death, he was remembered primarily as Mike Brady, the perfect TV dad. But as the truth of his private life slowly emerged, his story took on a new and more important meaning. It became a powerful and tragic illustration of the pressures faced by gay men and women in Hollywood during the 20th century. His life is a testament to the talent that was stifled, the happiness that was sacrificed, and the emotional toll of living a lie. His story forces us to look back at beloved figures from our past and reconsider their lives through a more empathetic and honest lens. It reminds us that the smiling faces on our television screens often hide deep and complicated human struggles. Robert Reed's life is a crucial part of LGBTQ+ history, a story of survival in an intolerant world. He wasn't an activist. He didn't march in parades or give fiery speeches. His resistance was quieter, more personal. It was in his refusal to play a scene he found demeaning, in his dedication to his craft, and in his quiet determination to live his life, however secretly, on his own terms. He was a product of his time, but his story has become a lesson for ours. It highlights how far we've come in terms of acceptance and openness, and it serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of prejudice. In May of 1992, the world was shocked to learn that Robert Reed had died at the age of 59. The initial cause of death was listed as colon cancer, but a few days later, the truth, which he had so carefully guarded in life, came out. His death certificate revealed that he was HIV positive. The news sent a ripple through Hollywood and through the millions of homes that had welcomed him as Mike Brady. It was a stunning and heartbreaking final act in a life defined by a painful secret. His daughter Karen would later speak with grace and love about her father. She confirmed his sexuality and acknowledged the immense burden he carried throughout his life. "He was an amazing father," she said. "He was a man who was in a great deal of pain for most of his life. He never, ever, 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 ever let on that he was in any way unhappy." Her words paint a portrait of a man who, despite his own inner turmoil, managed to be a loving and present father to her and a mentor and friend to his on-screen children. In the end, Robert Reed's life was a study in contradictions. He was a public figure who craved privacy. He was a serious artist trapped in a silly sitcom. He was the perfect family man who could never have the family life he truly desired. His story is not just a piece of Hollywood gossip. It's a deeply human tragedy. It's about the search for authenticity in a world that demands conformity. It's about the pain of being misunderstood and the quiet dignity of a life lived under immense pressure. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.